course, I've been looking for that option. Oh, there's two of them, now that I know the color. What would you like to have? You help yourself. This one? Won't that scare you? It's a snake.
Hi, what's your name and where are you from?
Well, my name is Tim Buckley, but this time of the year, I really prefer to be called Santa Claus. As you know, Santa Claus is from the North Pole.
Santa Claus is a very unique job. What led you to decide to become a Santa Claus? What's that story?
Well, actually, when I was a young man and got married, my wife's family had a tradition of Santa Claus bringing gifts to the children after Christmas Eve dinner. And being the newest member of the family, I was tasked with putting on the Santa suit and delivering the gifts and then just leaving. We didn't interact or anything. And I did that for a couple of years, and then when my children came along, we carried on the tradition in our own house, and and then we would do a little more talking and a little more exchange, and then along came my grandchildren, and so I've just been doing it, and then I've done it for friends, and we've had parties where I've been Santa Claus, so I just enjoyed the character and the idea of doing it and having fun with it.
How long have you been working as a Santa Claus?
I'd say 20 years. Yes, it's been 20 years.
From what I understand, you went to a school to become Santa Claus. What was that process like?
The first time I was Santa Claus, I worked at a mall, and I had no experience. And the next year, I was assigned a much bigger mall, and I was really getting a little nervous about that. And so I did some investigation, and I found there's a Charles W. Howard Santa Claus School in Michigan. And I read about it, etc. And I decided to send in an application. So I sent an application, they accepted me, and I traveled up to Michigan one winter, I believe it was in November, and spent a week at this school.
What was the school like?
Oh, the school was first of all, you have to understand there were about 20 people at the school, all looking like me, and so we would attend classes. We had different speakers come in and talk to us. We learned things like how to groom our beards, how to put on makeup, some of the important things, safety things we learned about how to hold a child, how to hold a baby. If there's any children with special needs, we were given some classes on how to handle that. And then we were given classes on what our legal responsibilities were. We were given classes on, one of my favorite classes that I took there was offered on storytelling. And the storytelling, what I learned about storytelling is you just don't give a child an answer, you tell them the story behind the answer. And when you tell the whole story, one, you'll be more believed, and two, it's kind of fun to weave stories into the Santa set. So it was, I will tell you a little thing that was kind of funny about it. So here were these 20 men, all about the same size, all looked about the same. We would wear Santa hats. And the poor lecturer would come and would give this lecture, and then when it was over, instead of applauding like you normally applaud at the end of a presentation, these 20 men in their very gruff voices would sing Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. And of course, here you'd have this lawyer standing up on the stage looking and saying, what's going on here? So it was a fun experience.
What was your first job as Santa, and what was that experience like?
Well, when I decided I wanted to try being a Santa Claus, I went to the shopping mall in the town I lived in, and I filled out an application and left it. I did not realize that they sent that application at the time I was living in New Mexico, and I did not realize they sent the application out to all the malls in their chain. And so I never heard anything. And then around early in November, I received a phone call. It was like on a Wednesday, and they said that they were calling me from Tampa, Florida, and they wanted to know if I could, that was Wednesday, if I could open the set on Saturday morning. And I said, well, I can, but you'll have to get me there. And they put me in the plane, and next thing you know, I was at a motel in Tampa. A car drove up, drove me over to the mall, put on my suit, showed me where the Santa throne was, and I sat there and been seeing kids ever since.
How do you think your background as a social worker has influenced your work as Santa?
Oh, I'm sure it's been a big factor because in social work you work with families, all children of all ages. I particularly worked for 30 years in a hospital, so if there were medical matters don't concern. I'm uncomfortable around particularly children that have medical problems. I will admit the first time and I won't never forget this, I did have a young boy come up and sit in my lap, and I asked him what he wanted for Christmas. And he said, well, Santa, he said, I'd like you to bring some chemotherapy for my mother because she has cancer. And I kind of took a gulp, and I wasn't quite sure what to do, but I realized I had to be very honest with the boy. And so I basically told him that Santa really can't bring chemotherapy, that really only a doctor can give chemotherapy. And I said, I really want to know, is your mother seeing a doctor, and is she being treated? And he said, yes. And so once that was said, I said, now will you tell me what I can bring you for Christmas? And he then gave me a long list of, pretty lengthy list of toys he wanted. But I do think having had a social work experience in a medical setting, I didn't react to that question. I just realized it was a question a child has, and I've had many questions like that in the 20 years I've been working as Santa Claus.
What has been your favorite part of this very unique job?
You're right, it's a very unique job, and it's probably one I have just thoroughly enjoyed. I think my favorite part of the job is when I interact with a child, I have one intent, and that is to make sure that child knows that they're loved and that their family is very proud of them. And so, and then I always tell every child that they have been good and they are not on Santa's naughty list. And I make sure the children can hear that, and they're listening when I say that. And because all children are good, and I really don't have a naughty list. It's delightful to see the children react with such a smile and such a sense of being reassured. And I thought, boy, that's an important message for Santa Claus to deliver.
Hey, I'm John Chuo. I'm the grandson of a Santa.
Having your grandpa be Santa Claus seems like any child's dream, but what aspects were difficult?
Well, whenever I would visit my friends' houses, sometimes they'd have pictures of them with Santa, and then Santa was my grandpa. And I swore into secrecy, so I couldn't tell them, you know, that's my grandpa. So that was kind of difficult.
What were some really fun parts about it, though?
It was a great tradition. Like every Christmas Eve, he would bring presents like to our house as Santa, and it was just like fun, you know.
Hi, I'm Nora Chuo, and I'm Tim Buckley's daughter. My favorite story is when my oldest daughter, we were trying to, when she was probably in kindergarten or so, we were trying forever to try to get her to go sit on Grandpa's lap at the mall. And I vividly remember her like hiding behind a planter and being too scared to even go close to him. And me saying, just take a really good look at him. Does he look like anyone you know in your family? And finally she was like, oh, it's Grandpa. And then she was forever fine with it, but it did take her a while.
Like disappointing.
Oh yeah.